Hey everyone, it's acceleratorsOrg.com monthly webinar with Jeff Bruno, your outsourced CFO. I want to welcome everybody who's live and who's not, who's going to see this replay. Very excited, of course, again, to bring what I can to help these businesses accelerate their growth. Right, Sean? Accelerate. So here we go today, and I am at a different location, if anyone noticed, but I'm in actually down in Ocean City, New Jersey today. But we'll be back, unfortunately, back home next month. So let's start today with some of the questions. Feel free to send any comments as well. So first submitter is Brad Coleman. He asked, what do I do when an equity partner of mine isn't pulling their weight? I have a business partner who has some equity in my company. I feel as if I am still doing everything needed on the day-to-day startup processes. How can I start the conversation that I need some help in getting things off the ground without demanding help, hurting the business relationship? Any advice on team building even when they don't work for you, but with you? Yeah, this is a very common problem, Brad. And I mean, we see it time and time again. We consider, there are things in the small business space, especially businesses under $1 million in this space that, growth causes problems. And initial structures that owners believe they are bringing to the table might not be the case moving forward. There are a lot of problems there. So first off, I would ask you, what is the percentage breakdown? I've mentioned this before in previous seminars, but if at all possible, if it can be a majority scenario for you, since you're the more active partner, that makes sense for decision making, so you can push decision making forward. And then ultimately, you don't need that person's approval. So I don't know what your breakdown is there. But have you put in an operating agreement or a buy-sell agreement from the beginning? Because that also can dictate some of the question marks in the relationship. If you have not, then it's important to set metrics in place. So what do I mean? Well, what does your business partner bring to the table that you expect them to do? So if it is they need monthly to do X, this many amount, and you start tracking that, and they say they agree to that, and then you show them, look, you did 30% of what you said, you'll start to have buy-in from that partner. So unfortunately, it takes a little while. It could take a quarter, 2 quarters for that to come together. If you don't do that, you just have memory of what it is and that your partner as well. And that can be very difficult to do for people to remember. So we say, put metrics down. What are you doing versus what am I doing? The other thing you can do is just, say to your partner, look, I'm doing more. You're not pulling your weight. So let's say you're 50-50. So I'm going to have to give myself some additional compensation. Now, if you have an LLC structure or a sub-S structure or something like that, you probably need equitable scenarios. So you would most likely add a salary component to you. So I've seen companies do that. They say, I'm doing more. We're not going to disrupt our equity distribution construct, but I'm going to take more salary on the business. So that's something to consider. Or just have a frank conversation with your partner. I mean, sit down with them and say, where are we going? What are you doing? If you don't want to do it, that's fine. But if they were bringing a certain skill set to the table that you needed to grow this business, and then you have to supplement that skill set with something else, that's going to cost you money. So you then have to turn to your partner and say, that's fine if you don't want to do this. I can't do it as your partner. That's why you're my partner in this. So, like, for example, operations and sales. Those are two things that tend to be partner-esque things. So maybe you're the operations partner and he's the sales partner, or she. I don't know. But maybe you say, well, then I need to hire a salesperson. and you're going to have to help the business pay for that salesperson. So you have to take a decrease in your salary, or you have to put more money in so we can pay for this person to make up for your shortfall. So that's really the tougher discussions you have to have with that person. And if you don't, what'll happen is your business won't grow. And if your business doesn't grow, then nobody wins, and you might as well move on. So partner relationships kill businesses more often than people think. Bad partner relationships. So that's my advice. I hope that helps a little bit. But structure in the beginning is really, really key. So the next question here is from Kelly Killingsworth. Kelly asked, how do I analyze how to price my services for clients in the construction business? Her business description is, I have a new logistics/construction business, and I'm finding that my bids for jobs are a lot less than my competition. And I wonder if I am leaving money on the table. How do I figure out how to price my bids and know what my margins are? I am sort of guessing right now, but I know that I will need a better system as I grow and build my team. Should I work with my accountant or someone else to help? So, I mean, sure. Let me tackle the software piece first. So, or like how you track this. So absolutely work with an accountant or an outsourced CFO like us. I mean, those are great resources for you because they can set up pricing mechanisms, they can set up margin constructs for you, they can look at projections, they can help you with QuickBooks Online on how to tag some things, get it in there. We typically don't do that. We'll outsource that to bookkeeping groups that support us, but we'll strategize with you. How do I set up my P&L? What's direct costs versus indirect costs? So on and so forth. You got to make sure that's very clear in your construct. What's my labor cost versus my material cost? What's my markup on my material versus my markup on my labor? You got to fashion all those things together. And then when you do that, you will have a better idea of how to bid and what your typical markup situation is. So, and I highly recommend in the construction industry, probably doing a markup scenario. Markup on labor, markup on material. That's usually how it's done. Sometimes people will do cost plus. It depends. It depends what you're doing. I mean, I've seen some businesses do a cost plus. So they'll say, here's my cost to do this job plus 20%, 10%, whatever. That's the profit. So, or they'll do fixed fee, not to exceed kind of relationship. And then that price might be a little bit higher, but the client then knows that they're covered, that they won't exceed scenarios in that. If the scope is really well defined, you could do that too. Like you've done a lot of the same projects, and you know within a margin of error, you're only going to be within a few percentage points of something. You could say not to exceed a certain level, and then if you perform better on your side, you get more profit. Those are ways to bid as well. So, those are things to talk about. But I think that what people miss in regular bidding this is some of the pieces, like you'll say, what are my costs? What are my scenarios that I have to worry about? Here's the price plus a markup. But you really need to think about reserve. And what I mean by reserve is like contingency. So things always go awry. They're not always the fault of the client, like they change something. There could be material prices go up, the job extends for some reason, labor demands something, there's overtime unexpectedly, there's bad weather. Come on, construction industry is horrible with those factors. So you got to put in a 10 to 20% reserve. Most people do. So that's something to think about. And then just to get into some more logistics here, but if you're working with some larger jobs that have AIA documents and they're doing bank draws and things like that, and there are really strict parameters of budgets that you have to stay in line with and deliverable timeframes on an AIA document, that then you get draws from a bank versus a private client paying you, then this puts a whole different scenario together here, because then you have to make sure that you have profit in there, reserve in there, 10% for profit and overhead, reserve, and then if things go way out of scope, you have to have a like a change order process. And people will understand that because it's very clear in your budget or your scope for the project. So make sure you're calling out everything in the scope so that you can really use the change order when you want. That's what a lot of businesses will do as well, is they'll look at that and they'll say, hey, we're going askew here, out of scope. I could add that piece to your project, but it costs a 4 times markup versus a 3 times markup. Why? Because you have to bring in labor or different specialists or reorder product, disrupting delivery constructs and timetables on your project. So change orders can bring in more profit. But sometimes you have to mark them up just because you're disrupting things, and you end up not bringing in the same profit. But minimally, it's a way to bring in some more cash flow, ultimately profit. So that's another way to do it. For margins, you got to look at what your industry is like. Where are you located? What can your industry absorb in your region? It's really dependent on region. I mean, we're in Philadelphia. Unions are still a big thing here in Philadelphia. Major thing with masonry and carpentry and so on. They still wield a lot of power. So prices are really high in Philadelphia for labor. So that sets the market price for us. And so building is a lot more expensive here. So prices are higher. So it depends on your market. You got to evaluate that. Hopefully that was helpful. But just be careful. Be careful with construction. Make sure you have enough credit lines. Make sure you have enough to support bringing in the supplies timely, so your men and women are not sitting idle on the job. There's a lot of considerations with them. And then you can get the best profit you can. All right, next question is from Heather Brockman. Heather, sorry, you're always here. I know Sean doesn't want to say this, but Heather, good to see you again. So, next question, Heather Brockman. Her company is Heather's Mobile Pet Salon. So her question is your company more legally protected as a corporation rather than an LLC taxed as a corporation? So I'm assuming, Heather, you're saying C Corp or LLC as a sub S or as an S corporation. So here's the problem. This is a legal question. So I think I forwarded you this before, but RCCB, Royal Cooper Brown here, I forget the Royal Cooper up here in Philly, great law firm. I think I gave you the info. You should definitely connect with them. And they'll do an hour call with you for courtesy as being a partner with us. So I highly recommend that, because these are the kind of questions you want to have them evaluate, and they'll evaluate your whole situation. If you want to engage them, fine. If not, don't worry about it. But these are legal questions, so I hesitate to answer these. But to make some generalizations about it, so it will really depend on the state that you're in. So it's critical you understand where you're filing, because certain states have certain regulations that are easier on corporations or LLCs or so on, and make it give you a little bit more liability protection from like employee lawsuits or other things of that nature. But that's state by state. And then versus a corporation versus an LLC, there are so many factors there. I don't know the liability question that much, but there's a lot of tax questions. There's a lot of future considerations on profit distributions. What are you doing outside of this? Are you married? Do you have a joint tax return that carry through income as a factor, or losses as a factor one way or another? There's so many accounting questions around this, more than legal questions. But certainly look at both. And since you are considering expanding this business, and I'm sure, I forget where you're located, but I'm sure at some point you might go to other states since you're a mobile unit. If you get that far, it doesn't matter what state you're in from a corporation, because you could always file doing business in other states. And so really, that's why a lot of companies file in Delaware, because Delaware has a lot of ease and regulations. and liability protections. And then they file as doing business in other states. So I would recommend that. But again, ask an attorney precisely on legal. Thanks. Next, Allison Koyanagi. Her question is, would you recommend self-funding or getting an investor for a new product-based business? Allison owns a digital marketing agency, last name pronounced Koyanagi. I have an idea for a new business. The only problem is that I've never created a product from scratch. I've run a few of the numbers, not all, to get to a prototype made and possible profit margin and so forth. There is definitely a market for this, and although I don't want to say anything specific, it falls into the health and fitness industry. It'll be worth it to create, but I'm not sure if I should self-fund this project or get an investor, especially around this COVID time because I'm being really tight with spending. Well, so Allison, be very careful with spending. Yes, as you noted, in COVID time, especially since you run a digital marketing agency, make sure that you have enough business coming in there. A lot of people are repositioning their marketing, and so I'm sure you can get some good traction there. But let's stay on topic here. So we always do the same thing you probably do with your marketing agency. We tell clients to come up with a marketing strategy, a competitive analysis, a customer analysis. These are all first critical steps in assessing a product. So, of course, costing and financial considerations are huge. So we would be the team that really would support you with, all right, what's the market? You come back with the market information. We pull together the projection. We look at your penetration, your possibility of getting into that market, so on and so forth. And then do feasibility studies of this much in, this much out, so on and so forth. And see what margins make sense for you. But you got to be very careful spending money on a product first. I'm sure you think it's an awesome product, and I bet it is. But there have been huge products that just fail miserably in a marketplace because the entrepreneur did not correctly do a customer analysis. Mainly, it's usually around customer analysis to see, and somewhat competitive, to see if that product would hold in the marketplace, that people would be interested in using that product. So it's, the fit to the marketplace is really important. So, so before you spend a lot of money, make sure you look at fit. Maybe do some focus groups. Get some people to sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, so that they can look at your product and see it and give you some feedback over a quarter, 6 months, maybe even a year before you spend too much money. And try that way. So just on a side note here, Allison, I could be one of your focus groups. I don't know if many people on this, on accelerators know this, but I run an outsourced CFO group as the CEO, but I also own a gym. I own an Anytime Fitness, 5,500 square foot gym in Philadelphia. I love it. It's a great spot. And so I could be one of your focus groups if you'd like. Happy to do that for you. We can sign an NDA. And maybe it is great. I'd love to see what your product is. So, that's one way to do it. You were asking about investors too. So outside of friends and family, VC, other angels, so on and so forth, they usually want traction or at least clarity on the product and where it can go and some initial sales. I don't know if you ever watched Shark Tank. I love that show. But, the people who have had, they always ask them the question, have you had sales? So sales is the initial traction that shows that this product can move forward. So I think investors in general are going to be very hard for an idea for you, but that's where friends and family come in. If you have your father, your mother, or your friends who said, I love that idea, oh my God, that's huge, and they jump on board with you and throw you 10 grand, 25, 50 grand to get this moving, that's an option. And then, you probably have to give up a little more of the company at that point because it's pretty risky, but that's an option. So I know that's a lot I was telling you there, but contact me and I'm happy to be a focus group for you. So best of luck with it. Sounds intriguing. Next question is from Marlena Carter. Marlena asks, are there better places to store my working capital and my cash instead of my checking account? Marlena Carter owns a pet grooming business. I have more capital than I need on an ongoing basis and wondering, how do I figure out how much to keep in our working capital account? And then how do I get the rest out of the business and invest it, or should I invest it as a business investment? Well, so first of all, Marlena, how much working capital do you need? Like you said, that's the question. How fast do you want to grow? Do you have leverage? Do you have a line of credit? How fast are we trying to do this? Because I don't know your business at all. I don't know if you need to invest in equipment. I don't know if you need to invest in people to ramp up as you're going. I don't know if you need to invest in a van to travel around. So I'm not sure what you need there, but excess working capital is not a typical problem that business owners face unless, one, they want to set up a lifestyle business and they just want to take that working capital off as their income, or they just are doing a slower level of growth, which is okay too. That's fine. That's a comfort level thing for you. And you manage the growth smartly so you don't have problems, which is always a good idea. Then you want to decide what level of working capital can be in place to avoid disruptions. So you might want 4 months of liquidity or 4 months of cash to avoid disruptions. I mean, we've been telling people since COVID that if you don't have 4 months, you're going to have trouble through a disruption. It's not every time that the government's going to come together with rescue dollars for PPP here. This is a one-time thing in a while. So we're always saying keep your reserve. Now, if you want to be tax savvy and continue to grow your business, we recommend taking some of that money, reinvesting in equipment or capital, things of that in your business, or purchases in your business to then generate more revenue the next year. And do the same thing as you continue to grow. Or if you really just want to park some of that money somewhere, sure, put it in investments. I mean, put it in stocks, bonds. You can put it in short-term municipal bond funds at 3.5%, 4%, tax-free, and just sit it there yielding you cash, money. I don't think that is the best avenue because in most cases, especially in a growing business, working capital is much more valuable as a leverage play on your business. Meaning, let's say your gross profit or even your net profit, let's say your net profit is 15%. That means you're getting 15% on the dollars in theory that you're investing in your business. So to grow it, assuming you're keeping same margins and revenue and you're managing your growth. So if you're able to do that, 15% is a much greater return than anything you can invest in the market right now, safely. So, these are the things you got to think about. So this would involve a full projection, some consultation, where am I going, looking at historicals, and so on. But you bring up a very good point. It's nearing the end of the year, so look at this heavily so you don't get hit too hard with taxes as well. Okay? Next question is another question from Marlena Carter. She is saying, is it acceptable to let any employee go due to their negative mindset or attitude? I own a pet grooming business. I have one groomer who is a pretty good groomer, but 3 of 4 statements that have come out of her mouth are negative. No matter the topic, negative. I'm a positive person by nature, and can find a silver lining in every single situation, and the complaining really annoys the piss out of me after a while. Is that enough reason to let her go? Or is it best that I keep her on for the growth of the business and maybe have a blunt heart to heart? How would you handle this? So, Marlena, to further this, I mean, this is a very difficult topic too, because there's a lot of considerations here in what is that person doing, right? So is that person forward facing in your business? So is that person saying hi to customers? Is that person part of your customer service where people interact with them? If so, absolutely, they got to go, 100%, because they will disrupt your business. They will cause bad word of mouth, and word of mouth is the number one way businesses, especially small businesses, grow the business. So, got to go. If she's internal and she's really good at what she's doing, and you just maybe avoid her and she does her job and she just likes to do her job and she's in the corner and she's just cranking through her job and she's efficient, and you can get through the mentality thing and just don't talk to her, I mean, that's something to consider as well. Sorry if I broke up there, but that's something to consider as well if you just want efficiency and you don't even need to talk to her. But a lot of the time what happens is if she disrupts you, your mental thought process, you're the owner, you're driving the business forward, you're driving the sales, that could disrupt your flow in trying to build your business. So you got to be very careful with that. Again, it's funny how these questions are about people and things like that, but us as CFOs, we deal with this all the time, Marlena. So we're not just doing reporting. We are in there as an embedded CFO for these clients. So this is a constant discussion point. I have a negative situation. How do I do it? Sometimes we'll give them compensation ideas. Sometimes we'll say, they got to go. We see the problem there. We're really part of that executive team. So these are all very relevant topics because ultimately they come back down to the financial aspects of the business. They affect your profit. They affect your advertising. They affect your word of mouth, your growth trajectory. They disrupt you, and you're the number one earner on bringing business in. So these are things that we discuss all the time. So I would say, depending on the situation, get her out or put her in the corner. Just be careful she doesn't burn the building down, like Office Space. for anyone who's old enough to remember that scene. Next, let's go to, is this the last question? Yes, this is the last question. So this one is from Sarah Hamilton. And she asks, how do I determine which KPIs I should be reviewing as a business owner as I am growing? I own a hair salon business. I own 2 locations and I am expanding, and I want to set up a system to be able to monitor certain data as we grow and look at it quickly. How do I figure out what I should be looking at? And then what system or software do I actually do it in? What kind of consultant do I hire to help me with this? So, Sarah, first off, you should probably get a remote bookkeeping group who is very familiar with QuickBooks Online or Xero or some other accounting system. You can do this all in accounting systems most likely. Or they can pull some easy reporting for you that you can use. But, if you own 2 locations and you want to expand, you got to look at the profitability of those locations. So you got to look at KPIs to look at are, very simply, what are my material costs? That's X. What are my labor costs? People who cut the hair. That's Y. Do I need bonus structures, commission structures in there? There we go. That is all my variable expense right there. So you take that all because it's all variable. You need products as your sales grow. You need more people, and you need maybe commission for those people, or how the breakdown is of how they get paid on the amount of jobs being done. I don't know how you structure their pay, but you take your full variable component. Now, I've said this on other webinars. Don't think of variable as costs that are here and not here. Think of variable as costs that apply to your revenue. The more haircuts you do or other services you do, the more variable cost. You will then get to a metric which we call the contribution margin. That is your most important metric in your business, period. Because that metric will tell you how many dollars you have to go against your fixed costs of expanding. So example, if you have rent, you have construction costs, you have utilities, you have your salary, other executives as you continue to grow to help your business, accounting costs, professional costs, whatever those costs are that are overhead costs. So that's what you need to cover. And construction costs as you expand. So let's think about it this way. So if for every dollar of revenue you bring in, you have a contribution margin of, let's say, 50%, just make it easy. So 50 cents of every dollar goes towards your fixed costs, your salaries, your rent, so on and so forth. Your salaries for overhead, your professional fees, all that. The other 50 is your labor, your material costs, all that. So that means for every dollar, you have 50 cents for those costs. So depending on how you're growing, how much capital do you need to build up to open a new space? What's your construction cost to open a new space? And then how much is that operating expense of that new location? And then you can look at those metrics. So it's contribution margin, which in your case could be very close to gross profit. And then what are the other expenses? Those are the main metrics you need to look at. Then you can look at utility. You can look at things like, well, I have a stellar stylist who she's a rock star, and she does, I don't know, 10 cuts a day, 20 cuts a day, all men. And she's just raking in the dollars. And so that's better for her. And there's somebody else who's a little bit slower, takes more time, jibber jabbers all the time, and they're not making you as much. So there's a utility function there. So that's a metric you want to look at. The high performers, you can give them more money because they're bringing in so much more dollars that go to your bottom line for expansion. And the other performers, you might have to get rid of them. Or you just have to give them less of a cut of the scenario so you can have a little bit more of a margin play there. So there are a lot of considerations in those metrics, utility being one. Then, of course, you want to look at buying power of products. Maybe as you get bigger, you have multiple locations. There's a way for you to buy in bulk, in discount. That's something to consider as a metric. Can I get something off from our products? Then, of course, look at your net profit because that's going to factor into where you're moving forward. How much leverage can I get as a business? How much cash flow do I have to open up a new business? And all of that is, one other really important thing, which I think for you is pretty fast, is your cash conversion rate. So you're going to look at how fast your cash converts. So like when you buy a box of supplies, how fast are those used up versus, and when do you have to pay your vendors for that versus when that turns into income? And the other way around, how quickly do you turn around some of the haircuts? I think most people are going to pay you cash on site, so you have less of that. But there's a cash conversion piece there that's important. So, there's a lot of metrics in a growing business, but these are some of the ones to talk about here. Relatively easy until you get bigger, because then you have more larger purchases and more overhead to consider when you're larger. That's it. And you want to set parameters for spend on marketing as a percentage maybe of your revenue growth, things like that. So that's how we would do it. And we typically will throw that in projection, talk to you about it, as you keep going. So, but initially, to start out, get a good remote bookkeeping group that knows how to use software, that can communicate with you, help you reorganize your chart of accounts to get a clear contribution margin, and go from there so you can get some clarity, at least some initial clarity on your current financials. So Great question, though. Great question, Sarah. So good luck with that. And as you come out of COVID, I'm sure there will be a lot more people coming back to get their hair cut. So hope this was helpful for, I think that's all the questions. Yeah, that was everything. Hope this is helpful for everybody today. I continue to love some of the questions that are out there. Keep them coming. Happy to answer as much as I can, especially during this time. And I'll be here. And I hope everyone has a good rest of the couple weeks of summer here. Enjoy your Labor Day. And we'll talk soon. Thanks. Bye.